All
And,
right.
and we are recording. So, hi, hello, everyone. This is Renee, and we are back with a part three of our Words of Wisdom Wednesday with the award winning stage director and film director, Stephen Nachamie. So, and Stephen, welcome. He is up in New York City and he is live with me today via Zoom. And I am super excited. I hope that you have all been enjoying, and I'm sure his students and friends and family from all over the world, as well as mine, have been really it's been amazing how much interaction that we've gotten and traction from LinkedIn and from certain producers and friends and people that we kind of know, and then things on Facebook as well too. And I'm telling my students that I coach, I'm like, you guys need to listen. This could be the man that's going to hire you for your next gig or something. So it's so important for us to be able to share. So thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on today and us starting with part three. Charles, we
Thanks for having me back. Yeah, I can't believe we have talked through a part three. So I love catching up. I'm grateful for this.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many nuggets, in our first interview, the part one that went like, I won't tell everybody, like over 2 hours. And then I had to splice it into a part two.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited. So Mama's putting her glasses on so I can make sure I read my notes right. So what I would love, and what I know that our audience, whether or not, there are other professionals that are in the business, that have been, working with us for over the past however many decades. And more importantly for me, and I know for you, because you were also a performing arts educator, is inspiring and encouraging this next generation of talent. And I wanted to make this part three about how you, and this is going to be my first question, it's kind of loaded, there's a lot of nuggets in there, but take your time. How did you transfer, we talked about in our last part too, from being on stage as a performer and the actor into, onto directing and dance captaining and choreographing, and how that kind of, evolved naturally. Now we would love to know, and I would love to know, how you started to transition from being a stage director into doing films, short films, and the videos and things that you've done, a film director. And not only how did that happen, but I have a really cool question. What was your preparation for how that happened? Like, did it happen simultaneously? Were you doing a stage production and someone said, hey, Stephen, I need you to direct a film? And you went, okay. So.
Well, a couple of things. Just sort of, and this always comes up, my inspiration, fame, watching them shoot, sort of stored up here because I stood on the sideline. One of the PAs let me stand a little closer, but I got to see how many times they would do something, how many cameras they had, the crane, they had, cameras on sticks, and then how they would alter something to get a reaction shot, how they would get, so they had these number stage, which that I understood. I got sort of the formations and all that from theater, but the ways and go overhead, or the moments they'd have where there's storyboard and then what if we can get this too, we can use this later. So watching them work, for years, it was something I wanted to do. For years, it was something I was a little scared of because, when I went to NYU, the film students, were hardcore. I did some of the films, and I remember the hours and hours and hours of watching them cut that 16 millimeter film and edit, themselves and all of that. So I did some student films, and it was something where I knew that there was a modification I had to do because I wanted to switch before we had iPhones. I wanted to switch. I would not switch, but add it as we had before we had all this really user-friendly equipment. So sort of around the time I started staging shows in the round, and what blew my mind about that is it's telling the truth. It's telling the truth in a different way. It's I feel like the round can sometimes be more vulnerable because you can't hide.
Yep.
Everybody sees your bag of tricks, and someone sees every side of you. So that got my thinking into the possibilities, because with film, it's you have to break out of the proscenium thing. And then I went back. I did a couple of intensives at NYU, one, I was on the waiting list and I finally got in. I was like, woo! So I went. And a lot of it, people in the film department said, look, you've been directing, you get that part, you know, your communication, you know, your beats, you know, your pictures. Why don't you start with the technical stuff? So I went back to NYU because, you know, my nerd brain from school, my math and science brain, I've done still photography. So I had to go back and understand light temperatures and apertures and how that all works. And then also an education again in how we communicate, that film is less huge stage pictures and more of the eyes. It's the things we can't see, you know, in a theater. And that requires a bit more stillness, because if you're doing close up and we move like we would on a stage, you just look crazy. You get your own subway seat. So it was understanding the vocabulary of shots. I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of researching. I had some really wonderful teachers. One teacher, just so you know, because you know how we prep for, we know the nation out. And the first thing I did, I got very ambitious, because I had a dolly shot that I had, I had a timing, I was counting it out, I knew how I wanted to flow. And the teacher saw what I was doing. He goes, wow, you understand theater, you understand this. And I had it storyboard, and he said, I'm going to do something. And he took my storyboards, he tore them up. He said, now play. Boom, my mind was exploded. My mind was exploded because I wasn't thinking in those terms. You know, there's some movie musicals like from the 50s, like if you look at Damn Yankees or Pajama Game, those numbers would just transpose like it's a proscenium.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you look at kind of the evolution. Older movies were shot like stage shows. They have the long extended scenes. They were shot like stage shows. But since that evolution, you had to think, what is an extended scene? We cut things differently. You know, we take in information differently, and it's even changed with TikTok. If you look at a TV show, everything's in little bites and bits to digest.
Yep.
Right. It's sort of it's still extended a little bit with movies, but your vocabulary has to be, how do I get the biggest impact without words? You know what I mean? How do I get the biggest impact visually? How do I get it by seeing the change up here? You know, and it's also now, how do I direct the actor to know what the establishing shot is, to know what, you know, the long shot, to know the medium, all of this.
Right.
Because I never quite understood when actors would go, I'm saving it for the close-up. You know, because you cry, it's physical, you cried.
So Stephen, how did you feel when your teacher, your director ripped up your storyboard? Like, where did you go after that? Because usually, you know, you have your notes or your storyboard and what scenes and your scene shots, right? You have everything set up. What happened with that? Like, how did that all?
It took me a hot minute, because, you know, there was the little bit of, you know, when you're studying something you don't know, part of you carries what you do know, right. with you. And I was in a group at that point. There were like three or four of us, and we did a lot of exercises first before we did our first short film. So this is one of the exercises, and one person in the group came from marketing, so their head was in a different place. Another person had just done video work, so we were all sort of speaking different languages in terms of what we knew of how to process and show. So the teacher was basically saying, you know what, this is not time is money with the theater. This is not like tech and theater. Right. He said, and now, well, and you know, it's funny because we were still using videotape at the time. We're digital videotape. I think NYU was about to switch to digital cards. So I just missed, you know, that moment. But he said, look, we can erase tape. You don't have to worry about, he said, it's not like we're going back to way back where you have this much film and then go over budget. He's like, we can do it again and again and again without wasting time, because generally if you change a card, it's like, boop, you know what I mean? It's not, you know, changing a reel.
Right.
So he said, you want to get as much coverage as you can, and you want to make sure you get your moment to get as much coverage as you can. And that's when I began to understand and learn the process of editing.
Wow.
We got assignments like taking footage from it was Bonanza, right? It was a TV show that had been established. It had been edited in a certain way, and we had to then tell the story in a different way. I don't know if you've seen, it's brilliant. It's online. It's somebody redid the Sound of Music trailer as as a horror movie.
No.
You know what I mean? So it was really learning that the way you communicate is a little bit different that way, because you can put it together later.
Mhm.
From there, I did a lot of sort of student films in terms of writing and understanding how writing works that way, and understanding the parameters, understanding a little bit more structure. So it was a lot of learning. I'm such a research nerd. I loved it. I got these big books. And then I got hired on the musical theater faculty at Film Academy.
Okay.
So training. And at that point, I think it's every graduating class gets to do a new movie musical written for them.
Wow.
You get your book writer. I worked with Bobby Cronin. I worked with Christine Toy Johnson. I worked with Danny Lincoln. All these great collaborations
Wow.
to work with the group to create this film.
Mhm.
After the last election, I had a very clear idea of the fund we were going to have. And after that, everybody was like, their lives had changed. Some people were like, wow, I don't know if my marriage is going to be annulled. I don't know, all this stuff. And all of a sudden, it became about superheroes and waking up and remembering that you're a hero. New York Film Academy shortly let me know that they love me, but if I do any more CGI in my films, I did 2 with CGI. They're like, okay, now try it without CGI. But got to collaborate in that case because when I was studying, I would also jump on friends' film shoots, people who were doing indie films, where I would come up with the boom mic. I would do everything I had trained a little bit in, I would do because I wanted to be on set.
Okay.
So Film Academy, you get a crew, you get a professional crew that knows what they're doing. So I could kind of observe what they did. And I was glad because just like theater, even if I didn't master every side, I had a vocabulary.
Okay.
I had a way to communicate.
Okay, and that's important, right? So can you, which is going to kind of lead me to, because you gave me a lot, which was amazing, which is great as far as your preparation and you wanting to learn, because I have a lot of students that I was telling you before as well, honor students, they love math, they love science, but they're like, and I'm like, no, this is a good thing because that's the way your mind works, because you never know. One day you may be behind the scenes instead of on stage or, in front of the camera. So this is great, Stephen, for those that are listening that love the arts, that love that have many gifts, but they may not be sure where they're going with those gifts. Do you know what I mean? But to be able to take it all in, like you were saying, fame, and when I did this, and in Little Shop of Horrors, and sewing and costume work, and so that it all served you, basically.
Well, you never stop learning. And in this business, why I love directing and why I love exploring different genres is that, early on, I'd worked with people who are like, I know it all. And not necessarily because it was about the ego, but because, there was a formula by which they worked.
Right.
And what I love is breaking the formula when I can, and learning, because the second I don't quite know how a piece is going to happen or how to answer a certain question, then I'm hooked. Unless it's sketchy, and then
and you're like, let me check, right?
But I'm hooked, and I'm amazed at if you get the right collaboration, and everybody's there on, because a lot of it is meeting with teams and getting on the same page and playing what if. You have your structure done, but what I love is when somebody who knows their field says, oh, I see where you're going. What if we can do this? And it's something you hadn't thought about. Fame did come back when I was doing a video shoot. Ben Rauch and I worked with Serena Sofer, who you might know. She choreographed. We did a Ben's video of, written by Gabby Gold too, I can't forget her, Jersey Christmas. And he wanted to do a tribute to 1985. Jersey has not left 1985, and especially on Christmas. So he was like, I got this idea. He rented a DeLorean to do this whole Back to the Future. But once Serena and I got the dancers, we had the pop culture was like, oh, I want to do this shot here. I want to try it. I want to do an 80s video where we roll through them and they all like, so we can reveal. So it was like, there were things that I was like, okay, I think we do it this way. And somebody go, yeah, what if we try this? And it's amazing because it's a collaboration almost with a wider net of people. Because I don't think, when people sit home or watch a movie, I don't think they realize how many people are there? If
Oh,
I can
yes.
find you an Instagram, because I did a steady cam shot on a musical where we kept, the number was about confusion, we kept circling. But because we were circling and because I had the extras for a limited amount of time, there were like 20 of us running behind this camera not to be seen as the camera circled. And I was like, you now, I didn't say anything, but I was like, because they, the extras didn't know the song.
Right.
It was so much fun. And the fact that somebody captured that moment,
That's
nobody
awesome.
knows by what.
That's almost as great. The bit, that kind of footage and film is, it's almost as great doing behind the scenes. I think it's more fascinating than actually what you produced.
It is, I always watch the bonus features because you're like, wow, that's an intimate scene. And then they go back and you're like, there are 170 people in that intimate scene. So those actors, amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Stephen, thank you for sharing that. So I have a great question just because I'm really curious, and you answered a little bit of it. You touched on it, but what are the similarities for you as a stage director and then as a film director? What are the similarities, and then what are the differences? And what is, I don't know, what do you tend to lean more toward these days?
I am, in terms of stage and film,
Yes.
I am hungry to do more film. Like I think you showed the Stand Still video that we did. I
Yes.
was able to do that remotely, so I'm hungry to do stuff. It takes a while because you have to do your treatments, you have to do all that, and then we have to do our other work. So I'm hungry to do more of that because I know a lot of stage directors who are like, oh hell no, I don't want to do that, it's not
Right,
live.
right.
But I've gotten to work with some amazing directors of photography. Piero Basso, who's an award-winning cinematographer and DP. We worked at Film Academy, and with great editors, because editors have made me see the possibility of, because in theater you take the note and you're like, well, maybe tomorrow we can try that. And in film, you have what you have of the scene. Yes, sometimes you can do reshoots. I mean, usually you can do reshoots, but I was open to the possibility that I have the reaction I want, but it may have occurred before I said action.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On. So, I mean, I'm fascinated by that. And, at a certain point in my career, it's also, and in life, you start to think a little different. I'm like, wow, what you do on film will exist hopefully forever.
True.
When you're in theater, unless you're very lucky and it's preserved or it's broadcast or whatever, it's
True.
And I love that idea that all of us breathing together, get your vaccines, get his face. That's so important to me. But the idea that maybe your work is seen by, hundreds or thousands of people, or if it's a workshop, maybe, 15 people.
Right.
But it's in their memory. And it's magical. But and the thing that hit me especially with Stand Still is that went all over the world, which I was, floored.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's okay. It's a big thing about legacy. It's about legacy, and that what's interesting about film is that because it's more intimate, you get a response that sometimes you don't get in theater because people have a chance to digest it, and now luckily they can rewind it. They could, whatever.
You know what? That's true, and that's interesting because I never would have thought about it that way. And I love the fact that you say, yeah, I love doing the film stuff more because, and of course it makes sense for you to share that because of what you've shared with us within our interviews together over the past, couple of things that make sense because you love to learn more.
I don't know if it's love it more, but I think I'm interested in it, in doing more because it's something that's also new to me. And it's something it's challenging to me because the problem solving and the amounts of improvisation that you can have, it's a different world. It's sort of like always being in tech.
Oh yeah.
And it's also I'm fascinated by it. I don't know that I love it more, but there's a fascination, hunger to learn more.
Which is great. I know it's trying to count us down. I don't know why. I put in for an hour So hopefully,
Oh,
remember last time it kept going. Do you remember? We had like 2 hours last time. So hopefully it doesn't cut off. I mean, if it does, it says we have 9 minutes left. But if it does, then we can always, go into a part 4. But I have a few more other questions that I wanted to ask you as well too. So you kind of started talking about Stand Still. So how did that project start? How did you, come up with your collaborative team who you wanted to work with? Because I saw it, not realizing it was you until later, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, look, wow, okay, they're in different, they're dealing with their own issues, and it's during COVID, but they're still moving and they're still together. And the edits for me were just amazing, the way it flowed. Do you know what I mean? So how did you come? How did you come up with this concept? To be able to direct this Stand Still. Who was your team? Who did you collaborate with? And what was one of your biggest challenges? And what was one of your greatest triumphs? Like, it's done, we did it.
so it's interesting because when we started out, as artistic director of Just One Step for Democracy, we've been collaborating. One of our steppers, one of our members is Sylvia McCalla, who's she's an extraordinary writer, songwriter, singer. She does everything, photography, but she's this most creative entity. And Sylvia and I started, a lot of our songs sort of had an edge, or were more R&B at that point. And we talked about exploring and reaching out to different styles. And she said, oh, I've got this. And I had this country thing this style that I want to write. And she gave me a rough mix of it. And the singer's Katie Bernard on it. And she gave me a rough mix of it. And I was fascinated. I said, send me the lyrics. And I took a moment. I said, this, I think, is a movement piece. This is because it's a yearning to move. You can't stand still. Yep. And I fell in love with this piece. And Sylvia and I brainstormed. And I reached out to some choreographers, and at that point, everybody was doing everything, for the vote. Yeah. And a friend of hers, who I actually met when he was on Fame and when he did Rent, Sean Earl, came on choreographer. And Sean is absolutely wonderful, just a very loving, gentle, kind soul. And he and I met, and we talked about the journey of it and the idea, and we brainstormed. And then he came up with some ideas of choreography, which he showed me several versions of. I'm thinking about this for this part and this for this part. We talked about it. And then he made teaching tapes. Ooh. He went to his gym alone and he made some teaching tapes. And I realized, because where we were as a people, as artists, as a country, as everything, that it's not one look. It's not creating an ensemble of a show, right. A dance ensemble of a show. So I really thought about the artists that I love, who are acting dancers and actors. Rosie Lana Fiedelman, she'll kill me if I pronounce it wrong. Fiedelman, she won't kill me. I have 2 hard names, so if I mess up somebody's name, it's a thing for me. Christopher Cavallero, who I met on Fame as well, who's been in La Cage in Chicago. Howard Perry, who lives in DC, and Howard and I worked on Chorus Line years ago. He's just such a good, amazing soul, passionate, great dancer. And Jesse Lawyer, who I'd worked with in West Side, who's an amazing, passionate dancer. And, I called a bunch because I originally thought, okay, maybe it's like 6 dancers. And then I started to map it out. I went, no, it's 4. It can't be more than 4. So what happened was I met with them and we talked through what it was about. We had a Google Meet or a Zoom or something. We talked about what it was about, and I had made a map. I'd highlighted the lyrics, sort of based the sections on Sean's choreography and everything in between, and we talked about what their situations were. So we collaborated on all of that. And then I had them send me reference photos of where can you shoot your inside, where can you shoot your outside, what do you have at your disposal, because we're going to work with that. And I gave them shot lists of the coverage I needed, because I didn't know who had what at their disposal. So I sort of made it easy. We found a vocabulary, we color coded. And then people said, I think it was something like this, I'll do this, and sent me test footage. And then after that, I got a lot of footage. I got my hard drive still. Sometimes I had them do reshoots. Jesse's partner, he is a director of photography. So he was like, we have this doc I'm gonna shoot. He got amazing footage for me. Rose's boyfriend got amazing footage, just amazing footage. And I started to put it together. And what's great about it, with my dance background, it's a lyrical piece. So it's not like you're cutting Rhythm Nation where it's the, you know, it's a beat. I just dated myself. I had to know how to breathe with the dance. So I learned Sean's sections too. And it was something about just trying different beats and where does this one emotional beat from one person connect to another. And I was so excited because we had this whole collaborative experience and I was like buzzing editing this. And then there were some things I wanted to try that someone who was my student at Film Academy, who has had an amazing career in Aladdin and chorus lines, just, and now he's a cinematographer and a director. He's just amazing. Pierre Murray. Wow. I called him like, I don't know how to do this, this, and this. Would you be able to tweak this section for me? And I'll tell you. And he was so generous. And he's a dancer as well. So he understood what I was looking for, understood the phrasing. And I just remember the last, when I clicked that last bit into place, because I was like a stickler of that's not right. This section needs to be here. This needs to land here. I cried like a baby. I had an ugly cry because it didn't occur to me. I mean, I knew how much was taken from us last year. I knew how much we were robbed of, especially nobody speaking up for the arts.
Exactly. Yep.
You vote wisely. I was in tears because it was mourning, but also celebration because I felt like I'd been back in the room with people.
Yeah.
And, you know, I knew it was something that felt special. And then when I shared it and the responses I got and what people felt from it, I went, okay. And, you know, the whole time working with Sylvia and Sean and getting it all out there. So I'm very, very proud of it because it encapsulates a moment in time when we were all feeling stuck and frustrated, like we didn't matter.
Yep. And trapped, like physically, like what the one guy, the one scene with the guy in his living room dancing, and then the dock scene, like I remember it was like from being inside to outside, and just the visual, and everybody was so separate and individual, but then collectively the way that they moved, and you could, for me, when I watched it, you could just feel the passion, and you could just feel the desperation, and you could just feel the, you know what I mean, being hopeless, but then being hopeful. You know what I mean? It was like this whole story that we got, and you were definitely right. It was definitely movement, because that song was beautiful, but it was the movement for me, of course, because I'm a dancer, but it was the movement for me that pushed me over the edge.
The lyric and the emotion, everything connected. And I wanted them, when they finally came to the unison part, it was so important to me that we have the energy that made it look like they were an ensemble now. So
that gave me goosebumps.
It might have been quicker and easier to just make it a Zoom thing, but it wasn't. I knew it wasn't right.
Yep.
You know, so that was something, that was a passion project that I want to focus more on things like that, but it's sort of a building experience where you have to have, you know what you don't know, and pay the bills, and, you know,
all that other stuff, important stuff, right?
Yep.
Wow. So, I mean, so Stephen, because I'm not sure, I'm hoping, I'm crossing fingers. It's given us a countdown of a minute. As like I said before, the last times only with you, like I've had other Zoom meetings where it literally just cut me off and I'm like, oh, sorry. But with you, it'll keep going for like an hour or two. I don't know why. Maybe you got that magic. You might have that magic.
Work on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, ta-da, let it keep going. I hope we're not going to cut off. If we do, what I'll do is I will call you back, and then we can chat a little bit more. But we started, do you know what I mean? Like you started arcing about, you know, this is what you love to do more now, you know, as a film director. I'm afraid it's good. I hope it doesn't cut off.
Well, I'm fascinated by it. I think that's the big thing, is especially the possibilities that can be done when we can't have a big group together in the theater, but we can still share it.
And I love that. See, that to me, I love that. That is important, because you are carrying on. You're not letting anything stop you. Do you know what I mean? Oh, theater, no theater, lockdown, no lockdown. Okay, I'm still going to let my creativity ooze and flow. I'm still going to bring a team together. You know, we're still going to get through this, whatever it may be, together as a community, as a theater community. Do you know what I mean? As an artist community. And for me, that's really important. I mean, you know,
that evolved by Arnisha Walker